But sources told us Justin is not the clear-cut villain, as some people who worked on the film are standing by him.
How detailed Baldoni's lawsuit with his own versions and the full text message threads and the full transcript of what was going on and these stills. I don't think she has a chance.
Justin Baldoni just destroyed Blake Lively in court in the most humiliating way possible, and honestly, it's the kind of karma that's been circling for months.
Yes, I believe she is misusing it, let's call it, in order for a underlying agenda and
She spent all this time building a pity parade, hoping no one would question her narrative. But Baldoni walked in with cold facts and shut the whole circus down.
I do think he's leading the win, and I will repeat, this is a fight that Lively probably did not understand how much it has exploded beyond her control.
The worst part is, she never even saw it coming because she assumed silence meant surrender. But turns out, it meant strategy.
Everything Blake Lively is doing right now is trying to convince us that she's happy and she's doing fine and she's popular and she's loved.
So here's where things start getting really insane. Because while Blake Lively was busy staging her public meltdown, Justin Baldoni's team was quietly doing everything they could to end this drama peacefully. Just a desperate behind-the-scenes push to stop Blake from turning a messy movie production into a full-scale war zone. And the craziest part? We weren't supposed to know any of this.
So here is the post that's been pushed and has everyone up in arms on social media this weekend. It is a post, an email sent from Melissa Nathan to Jennifer Abel.
Thanks to a leaked email that's now floating around Reddit, the curtain got pulled back on what Justin's crisis team was actually doing. The email was sent from Melissa Nathan, a crisis PR professional working with Justin's camp, to Jennifer A.L., Baldoni's publicist.
Melissa Nathan was the crisis manager or the crisis PR team that Justin Baldoni hired when he started feeling that things were turning against him and he freaked out.
And what's inside that email? Proof that Justin's side wasn't plotting revenge. They were plotting damage control. Full-blown reputation CPR. Not for Blake, for Justin.
Blake Lively allegedly blackmailed Taylor Swift into supporting her, trying to get her to support her.
At this point, Blake had already made it clear she wasn't backing down. She was allegedly threatening Taylor Swift behind closed doors, pushing her to support her lawsuit or else she'd leak their private texts.
And she threatened to leak her text messages, their private text messages, if she didn't. And also she demanded, allegedly, that Taylor Swift should delete all the texts between them from like September, October.
She was calling the shots, leveraging connections, and playing the PR game like a war general. And in response, Melissa Nathan's strategy wasn't about smearing Blake. It was about trying to survive her chaos.
In this email, Melissa Nathan is explaining to Jennifer Abel all the things that they can do as a crisis management team to get control over the situation.
The plan was comprehensive and expensive. $175,000 for a 3 to 4 month campaign. That included full website takedowns, scrubbing Reddit threads, controlling the social narrative, planting new discussion threads to shift the conversation, and keeping a social crisis team on standby around the clock. They even promised it would be 100% untraceable. But here's the twist. The whole thing never even launched.
So this was in August 14th, okay? Right after the premiere, a story popped up from nowhere on TMZ saying that Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, she felt kissing scene lingered too long, feels he fat-shamed her. Remember that story when it first came out?
Why? Because they didn't need to. The backlash against Blake came all on its own. No one had to lift a finger. The very same kind of digital manipulation Blake's camp accused Justin of doing? She got torched online without Justin's side ever pushing the button. Public opinion just naturally started turning the moment her threats and lies started leaking out.
Full social crisis team at hand for anything. Engage with audience in the right way. Start threads of theories to discuss. This is the way to be fully 100% protected.
And yes, that irony is brutal. a 175K PR shield designed to defend Justin never even got used. It just sat in an email like a loaded weapon, untouched. Meanwhile, Blake was out here throwing PR grenades at herself, accidentally fueling the narrative that she was the one trying to rewrite reality.
At this point, you have to remember that Blake Lively was already threatening Justin Baldoni. He received a letter, a statement written by what we now think is probably most likely Ryan Reynolds.
But what really blows the lid off the whole thing is that Justin himself wasn't even looped in. That's right. His name doesn't appear anywhere in the email. He wasn't copied. He wasn't directing the strategy.
He was supposed to sign this. Remember, It Ends With Us was a troubled production, which we take full accountability for. We are very sorry to everyone we caused upset to privately and publicly.
While his name was being dragged through the mud, and while the internet was eating up Blake's sob story, his team was quietly trying to put out the fire without even telling him. That tells you everything about his mindset during this mess. He didn't want to escalate. He didn't want a public fight. He just wanted it fixed, privately and respectfully.
Including her lawyers, her publicists, and everyone are freaking out because they're seeing where this is going, and especially with the news about Taylor Swift.
And that's the difference between them. While Blake was allegedly blackmailing Taylor, trashing Justin in the press, and pushing a fake narrative through selective leaks, Justin's camp was trying to stabilize the situation, not to destroy her, not to attack, just to contain the circus she was building.
Because now even magazines like People, that were definitely pro Blake Lively before, are now starting to turn. The articles that they posted last week, which I talked about.
The email even highlights how sensitive they were about public perception. They wanted to create a safe PR space, not a hit job. The goal was to engage audiences the right way, not launch smear campaigns, but it never happened, because the truth was already ugly enough.
A lot were definitely not the types of articles that People magazine have been writing before.
People saw through the stage smiles, the red carpet photo ops, the new bestie selfies with Salma Hayek. The internet smelled the stunt, and no amount of Reddit thread planting could have saved Blake's side from imploding.
Blake Lively, Colin Hoover, the entire cast and crew led with professionalism every step of the way. Any negativity aimed at them is ours to own. This is what they wanted them to sign.
Now, fast forward to court. The judge and legal teams are looking through documents, watching leaked footage, and seeing things that most of us haven't even seen yet. But you can be sure this email is part of that pile. And while Blake's side screams about smear campaigns and manipulation, this proves something different. Justin's team was the only one actually trying to keep things clean.
Then this statement continued to say, we mutually agreed that the cast would be promoting the film separately and understood why. We've always said we are not perfect, and even if unintentionally make mistakes, we will always own them.
And the fact that this untraceable email leaked, that just shows how sloppy things have gotten. No one's in control anymore, not even the pros. And it shines a massive spotlight on just how far Blake's team might have gone behind the scenes to make themselves look innocent while painting Justin as the villain.
We hold ourselves accountable. It's not anyone's job, but ours, and that's part of being man enough. They used him again, his words against him, as they've done so many times.
But instead of building their defense, they triggered the exact outcome they feared. The truth got out anyway. So while Justin stayed silent, stayed professional, and let the receipts speak for themselves, his team was already a few steps ahead.
Okay, so keep this in mind. This is the statement that Blake Lively's team wanted Justin Baldoni and his team to publish in the press.
And now, it's not just a he said, she said drama. It's a documented, provable implosion. One that Blake can't spin her way out of. So, this is where things go from shady to flat out sinister. Because while most of us were still trying to wrap our heads around the chaos around It Ends With Us, Blake Lively's team was allegedly drafting a public apology letter that would have pinned the entire disaster on Justin Baldoni.
At this time, he was obviously freaking out. And I don't know, as I said, I don't know if Justin Baldoni, he wasn't even CC'd in this email between Jennifer Abel and Melissa Nathan.
Not just the bad press, not just the production delays, everything. And they didn't stop there. They wanted him to go down with a smile on his face, with his own words used as the rope.
But they were here. This is like a pitch from Melissa Nathan with a quote of how much it's going to cost them to do crisis management for them.
Let's be very clear. This wasn't a random leak or gossip from a blind item. The apology letter in question was a formal, detailed draft reportedly presented to Justin's team around the time tensions hit their peak, shortly after the film's early screenings bombed, when Blake's version of the movie was privately screened to a crowd that included Ben Affleck and Bradley Cooper and received immediate backlash.
And they say all of this will be most importantly untraceable. That's kind of funny, since this email is now traceable.
This timing matters, because right after that, the PR strategy from Blake's team went into overdrive. The draft, allegedly written under the influence of her publicist Leslie Sloan, and possibly even ghostwritten with Ryan Reynolds' help, wasn't an apology. It was a career assassination letter signed by the victim.
If it's ethical? No, it's not ethical. But was Blake Lively's team doing the exact same thing? Yes!
According to multiple reports, including commentary by Sashi Flo on her Flossom Talk channel and supporting Reddit leaks, the letter demanded that Baldoni publicly accept full blame for the negative response to his ends with us.
So this was in August 14th, okay? Right after the premiere, a story popped up from nowhere on TMZ saying that Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, she felt kissing scene lingered too long, feels he fat-shamed her.
It included lines that pinned the chaotic production, fan disappointment, and media backlash squarely on Justin. He was expected to take accountability for all creative decisions and missteps, and the wording was tailored to make it sound like he alone was the reason the project stumbled.
So this allegedly, I'm guessing wildly here that it came from Leslie Sloan.
No mention of Blake's alleged editing takeover, no reference to her destroying the original score, no insight into the cast infighting or delayed shooting schedule. Just a blanket statement of guilt, all placed at Justin's feet.
Blake Lively was experiencing. How did they deal with that? Try and push Blake Lively in a more positive light? No, they went out and tried to trash Baldoni instead. Exactly what they're accusing him of doing to her.
But what takes it to a whole new level of calculated cruelty is this. The letter lavishly praised Blake Lively, Colleen Hoover, and the rest of the cast. Descriptions included phrases like professional, committed, and exemplary, essentially casting everyone else as victims of Justin's poor leadership.
The thing is with this post as well, people are now up in arms because they were like, oh my God, this is terrible. How could they do something like this? This is the evidence. Well, it's been out there the entire time. And the thing is, Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel have both been open that they had strategies in place, but they said they never had to use them because the backlash towards Blake Lively grew organically anyway.
So not only would Justin be confessing to crimes he didn't commit, he'd be elevating Blake's image in the process. The same Blake who, at this point, had allegedly threatened Taylor Swift with the exposure of private text messages and had completely hijacked post-production of the film.
Blake Lively's team have all the same tools as Justin Baldoni has. They have a lot more money even. So you can imagine that they could actually do the same thing if they wanted to.
And if you think it ends there, it doesn't. The apology letter wasn't just emotionally manipulative, it was psychologically engineered. It actually weaponized quotes from Justin's own podcast, Man Enough. For context, Justin created Man Enough to explore male vulnerability, empathy, and the deconstruction of toxic masculinity.
We broke the story, TMZ. Cast and crew agree there's definitely bad blood between the It Ends With Us co-stars, but sources told us Justin not is not the clear-cut villain, as some people who worked on the film are standing by him.
It's his safe space, his values platform. But Blake's PR team reportedly twisted his past podcast lines, quotes about owning your mistakes and standing up for women, and embedded them into the draft to back him into a moral corner.
Are they people from the set, or are they her publicist? Also keep in mind that Blake Lively hired Nick Shapiro, who's an ex-CIA guy. Why did she hire him? To do things more transparent and openly? No. And
this is like someone stabbing you with your own kitchen knife, then asking you to thank them for the lesson. The message was clear. If Justin refused to sign, he'd look like a hypocrite. If he did sign, his credibility as a director, actor, and activist would be permanently tainted. Either way, he'd lose.
Was this story in TMZ that someone leaked?
Sashi Flo, who's been following this entire saga like a hawk, commented on this letter specifically in her April breakdown. She noted that the language used wasn't just rehearsed, it was strategy-driven. It included terms Justin often used in public discussions, words like accountability, safe spaces, growth, designed to guilt-trip him into submission. They knew exactly what they were doing.
What Miss Lively is attempting to do is set a dangerous precedent by barring the courthouse doors to my clients and punishing them for having their day in court, a right protected by the First Amendment. This right protects not only Mr. Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties in this particular case, but all Americans in the future who have false allegations leveled against them and seek relief from our justice system.
The draft also mentioned the idea of a mutual understanding between the cast members to promote the film separately. Now, let's pause there, because that line alone was meant to protect Blake from the PR nightmare of not appearing with Justin in press junkets.
The reaction is because of how detailed Baldoni's lawsuit with his own versions and the full text message threads and the full transcript of what was going on and these stills, I don't think she has a chance.
It's something fans had already started noticing. Why weren't they doing joint interviews? Why was Blake only appearing solo or with supporting actors? This line in the letter was meant to retroactively justify her absence, while pinning it on Justin as a mutual agreement, not a strategic exit on her part.
What was very well argued by Baldoni's attorneys is that there has to be a showing of malice and that now it's going to go back to her, to Lively. Lively had a reasonable basis for her claim in the first place.
But there's another layer. The letter also stated that Baldoni's production company, Wayfarer Studios, would release a separate press statement echoing the same sentiments. It was supposed to be a coordinated two-step PR surrender. The statement would reaffirm that Blake and the cast had behaved with complete integrity throughout the production, and that Wayfarer fully accepts the public's disappointment and the learning opportunity the backlash represented.
It has to be on the face of his complaint. And what that means is that the judge reading the complaint in this motion has to assume everything that's in it and all those many, many, many pages.
And what's perhaps most disturbing is the underlying goal. This wasn't about accountability. It wasn't about resolution. This was about erasing Blake's role in the disaster, turning her from problem into victim, and reducing Justin from co-director to sacrificial goat.
The judge would have to make a determination that somehow she had a good faith, reasonable basis, and I don't think he can do that.
If he had signed that letter, it would have completely shifted the legal and public narrative. Any future footage of Blake's alleged behavior on set, any documentation of her control over editing, any evidence of false claims, all of it would have been viewed through the lens of a man who already admitted it was his fault.
Is Brian's sort of quote legit? Like, do you think this is a massive threat to others? Like, is she trying to play this law, this Me Too law, which we're going to go through more depth, to like actually try and get her way? Do you agree with his urgency?
Blake's team didn't want peace. They wanted submission. They wanted Justin to quietly vanish into the shadows while they rebuilt Blake's brand as an empowered female filmmaker who had to endure a difficult male collaborator. A fake narrative. A deliberate inversion of reality.
Yes, I believe she is misusing it, let's call it, in order for a underlying agenda and a fight that she picked that probably she regrets picking.
Let's talk about the one move that might have blown up Blake Lively's entire legal strategy in the worst way possible. Because when you allegedly blackmail Taylor Swift, you're not just lighting a match, you're setting the whole house on fire. It started, according to Brian Friedman's bombshell letter, with a series of threats Blake reportedly made to Taylor behind closed doors. Blake allegedly told Taylor that if she didn't support her lawsuit, or at the very least keep quiet, then Blake would leak their private text messages. Not 1 or 2 messages, but everything from the September to October window, right when the It Ends With Us disaster was peaking. And it didn't stop at that. Blake allegedly told Taylor to delete all their texts, a move that looked more like obstruction than friendship.
What Baldoni's alleged to have done is not like one super serious, like the boob grab, right? It's not that. It's these kind of like nefarious things which shouldn't happen in the workplace.
This wasn't just gossip. This came straight from legal filings. The allegation was so bold, it sparked immediate backlash. Because if there's one person you don't pressure publicly or privately, it's Taylor Swift, who's not only the most powerful celebrity on the planet right now, but also known for cutting off friends like dead weight when boundaries are crossed. And sure enough, Taylor went dead silent. No statement, no tweet, no subtle Instagram like, just a complete blackout.
Her motivations for bringing these quote unquote unlawful things during those stories of them trying to take over the film now give context to his counterclaim.
Taylor's signature PR team, led by Treepain, didn't issue so much as a 2-word denial or clarification. That silence was its own message, and it didn't go unnoticed. By mid-April, outlets like People magazine, who had previously given Blake fluff coverage for years, started shifting their tone. Their recent headlines stopped focusing on Blake's outfits and started subtly hinting at friction, using language like alleged, reportedly, and unnamed sources close to the case. In other words, they were backing away, fast.
The judges at this stage, where they're just like, well, I'm just looking at your guys' complaints. The judge can't really make a credibility finding. He has to assume what is in the complaint is true.
The final piece of the betrayal? Blake's alleged attempt to fire the film's composer by claiming Taylor didn't want to be involved if he stayed. This was another calculated move, because it wasn't about protecting Taylor's boundaries. It was about Blake trying to snatch the Producers Guild of America, PGA, credit for herself. According to multiple insiders and laid out in Sashi Flow's coverage, Blake needed to show control over creative departments, including music, to qualify. So she reportedly told Sony that Taylor had an issue with the composer, even though Taylor never said any such thing.
So that is why Baldoni's attorneys are like, this doesn't have a shot because of how detailed the complaint by Baldoni is. The judge cannot make an opposite finding because he has to, or she has to make an assumption that everything in that very well-detailed complaint is true.
That lie unraveled quickly. Sony, desperate to keep Taylor's music in the film, fired the composer. But when Taylor's team caught wind of it, they made it crystal clear. Taylor was one of 19 artists who licensed songs for the movie, nothing more. She had no role in editing, producing, or removing anyone. That exposed the entire manipulation attempt. Blake had leveraged her friendship with Taylor to advance her own credit, and when it came out in court filings, it made her look desperate and deceptive.
I do think he's leading the win, and I will repeat, this is a fight that Lively probably did not understand how much it has exploded beyond her control.
Now shift to the digital smear campaign Blake's team allegedly cooked up on Reddit. And this is where things go from shady to downright dystopian. Around the same time Taylor started ghosting Blake, Reddit users began noticing heavily moderated threads popping up across Blake-related subreddits. These weren't normal discussions. These were guest list only threads with locked comments, carefully managed by invisible moderators. And what made them sus? They were filled with pro-Blake sentiment, pushing a narrative that Justin was manipulative, difficult, and responsible for the film's failure.
Unless he's not really good at what he's doing, which it doesn't seem like, because if you read everything that's been happening in the press lately, he is not a very good guy at crisis management. Maybe she should hire Melissa Nathan.
According to Sashi Flo and insider reports, these threads weren't organic. They were planted, and the mastermind behind this digital fog machine, Nick Shapiro, Blake's hired crisis manager. And not just any PR rep. Shapiro is a former CIA operative turned Hollywood fixer.
Maybe she should hire Melissa Nathan if she's thinking she's so good that she could do this to her. I mean, I would love to see the contract that they wrote with Nick Shapiro. What was he promising them in that contract?
He was hired specifically to handle the spiraling press disaster Blake found herself in after her version of the film tanked and the lawsuit made headlines. His job? To control online sentiment, shift blame, and make Blake look like the misunderstood heroine of her own downfall.
That he signed with Blake Lively's team. What is he doing? On this Reddit thread, there was a note attached saying that you can request to be approved to comment on guest list only posts.
But Reddit wasn't buying it. Users flagged the manipulation instantly. Several accounts that promoted pro-Blake narratives were found to be newly created or repetitively spamming. And moderators were removing dissenting opinions. The threads weren't about conversation. They were about controlling narrative flow, just like a sanitized Instagram comments section.
So this post of this old email is heavily reviewed. And it says, if you're not a member of this community, your comment will be removed.
And while Blake's side was allegedly running a digital smokescreen, the real wrecking ball came from the leaked email on Justin's side, specifically the one from Melissa Nathan to Jennifer Ale that included everything from Reddit manipulation to social media control.
I don't know what that community is. Maybe it's a pro-Blake Lively community, but I feel like if you don't allow everyone to comment, I think it's something fishy there. There's something a little bit suspicious about that.
But here's the twist. Justin's team never used it. He wasn't even CC'd in the email. His camp planned for defense, not offense. And because they didn't act on it, it became a smoking gun showing that the worst manipulations weren't coming from Baldoni.
And there's a moderator for the comments. The only place we've seen moderator for comments are on like typical pro-Blake Lively pages and things. So, I mean...
They were coming from Blake. That one leak made all of Blake's deflections look hollow. Because while she was pointing fingers at Baldoni's supposed PR games, her own side was allegedly planting narratives, hiring intelligence veterans, and flooding Reddit with pre-approved praise. And it didn't work. Reddit users tore it apart. Taylor Swift ghosted her. People magazine changed sides. And the court filings exposed more of it than her team ever expected to become public.
Yeah. This is definitely, the way I see it, I think this is definitely something that Blake Lively's team is behind, for sure.
The biggest problem with Blake Lively's case isn't what's being said. It's what's been recorded. And that's exactly what her team didn't account for. Because while Blake was allegedly running a PR circus and trying to spin Justin Baldoni into Hollywood's next villain, there was something she couldn't spin. Dozens of hours of raw, uncut, behind-the-scenes footage.
Yes, so my point here is that these dirty games that they play behind closed doors, these PR agencies and crisis management teams, whatever, it's dirty.
And according to multiple insiders, the cameras on the It Ends With Us set, they never stopped rolling. Not between takes, not during costume disputes, not even when tempers flared. That's not speculation. That detail came directly from sources with access to production protocol, as mentioned in Sashi Flo's breakdown of the filming disaster. The production style used by Wayfarer Studios kept cameras on during downtime, partly for continuity, partly to avoid time lost in setting up again, and partly because they saw problems brewing early. That decision? It might be what ends this case altogether.
Things that really surprised people and shocked people when this lawsuit was filed, that they were playing dirty. But you have to keep in mind, everyone is doing it. don't say that Blake Lively's team hasn't been doing it. And you have to remember the pressure that Baldoni was under when this happened.
Because this footage doesn't just show behind-the-scenes friction. It allegedly captures Blake Lively mocking Justin's physical appearance on camera, specifically telling him to get a nose job in reference to a scene she would later claim made her uncomfortable. That exact same scene was the one where she later alleged harassment. And yet, according to the footage and testimony, she was the one openly joking about his face, not the other way around.
Also, keep in mind, he wasn't CC'd on this email. He probably didn't know anything about this. He didn't know that they were planning these strategies, untraceable strategies.
According to the timeline of production chaos laid out in both court filings and Reddit leaks, these delays weren't minor. They cost real money. Blake reportedly brought her own outfits instead of using assigned ones, forced hair and makeup changes last minute, and refused to perform scenes as scripted, unless she had final say in how they were edited. And the footage reportedly documents every bit of this.
But of course, it doesn't even say here that they're planning to post things to tear Blake Lively down. They're just saying that they want to control the situation.
The fact that dozens of hours of this raw footage exist changes the stakes entirely. If this goes to trial, it's not going to be a battle of who can tell the best story. It's going to be a screening. A screening where a jury watches Blake Lively refuse to take direction, insult her co-director, and act like she was running the entire production. According to insider testimony submitted by Wayfarer's legal team, these recordings show a pattern of behavior that matches every accusation made against her. Domineering, erratic, and unprofessional conduct that derailed the project from the inside out.
And as far as I can remember, he didn't get any negative press around this time. The only thing that he got that was negative was this story in TMZ that someone leaked.
Now tie that to what happened with the actual movie cut, because what Blake did in the editing room only made things worse. When she finally got her way and forced Sony to let her produce her own version of the film, she brought in Taylor Swift's music video editors while she was shooting in Italy. And then she hosted a private screening for industry A-listers like Ben Affleck and Bradley Cooper, people who could help shape the film's post-release reputation. The feedback? A disaster. Sources close to the screening said the reaction was blunt. It makes no getting sense. Some even reportedly laughed at scenes that were meant to be serious. Sony was mortified, but instead of pulling her cut immediately, they gave her a second chance, on the condition that she reintegrate Justin's scenes and have it edited properly by someone with real feature film experience. She agreed, but when it came time to screen it for fans at Book Bonanza, Blake allegedly overrode everyone, Sony, Wayfarer, even the event's internal team, and showed her original broken version again. That stunt wasn't just defiant, it was strategic sabotage. She knew that once the fanbase saw her cut, it would be difficult, if not impossible, for Sony to promote or defend Justin's version without creating backlash. So now, in court, Justin Baldoni's team doesn't have to argue about credibility. They don't have to counter emotional narratives or he said, she said tactics. They can just press play. And just like that, Blake's performance off camera might be the one that finally ends the show. Do you think so?